Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeff Malinoff. I am back from my week away in Hawaii. I had a great time. I was on the main island in Maui. Couldn't be happier, but I am even more happy than I was in Hawaii because I get to talk to you beautiful people. Awesome sauce. Let's get into it. First things first, we got to talk about Johnny Manziel and his return to American football, as we have to talk about his AAF debut and his game with the Memphis Express against the Birmingham Iron. I almost forgot their name for a second. I almost had a complete brain fart. But I do love that name. Yeah, awesome. Anyways, moving on. What was I saying? Yes! AAF debut, Johnny Manziel and his victory with the Memphis Express over the Birmingham Iron. They desperately needed a win because they were not looking good at the start of the season. So, with that being said, let's move on, we'll move on from that and talk about Gronk's retirement, see what that means for him and his legacy. And does he need to prove anything else in the NFL? Everyone says, he's too young to retire, or so on and so forth. And even his agent says, don't rule out a return. But does he really need to return? We'll talk about that later on. We will also talk about some free agent signings or teams that guys who have not been signed to a free agent contract yet, and we'll see where they are meant to end up or when to not end up. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But first things first, like I said, we got to talk about the Alliance of American Football. Still does not roll off the tongue for me. I don't know about you guys, but these. The NFL rolls off the tongue, National Football League, you know? But when you have the "of" there, it really drives home the fact that this name doesn't work. But whatever. What can you do, right? Well, let's move on to the game. Iron versus Express. The 1-5 Express versus the 4-2 Iron. And right now the playoff picture, if you can call it that, it's basically college football playoff. It's 4 teams in the playoffs, West and East, 1-2, 1-2, and 3-4, and 3-4 out. So right now it's the San Antonio Commanders and the San Antonio Commanders, San Diego Fleet. Yeah, I was right. And the favorites to win the Arizona Hotshots are the odd ones out at the moment. I'm not entirely sure about the aftermath of the games went on, but I'm pretty sure last time I checked, the Hotshot won against the Fleet, so they might be taking up that next spot in the playoffs. So that was as before this week began. So I would put up the Arizona Hotshots over the San Diego Fleet at the moment, so they're the number 2 at the moment at 4-3. As for San Antonio, they won their game, made it 4 wins in a row, so they are comfortable in that position. Also, okay, so back to the 1-win Express versus the 4-win Iron. Basically, it's Trent Richardson versus Johnny Manziel. They were on the same team in Cleveland, right? Maybe not. I'm not sure. Both of them were afterthoughts after Cleveland anyways. Regardless, moving on from that. And you would expect Johnny Manziel to struggle because, I mean, let's all face it, we all remember his first game, right? In the Canadian Football League. Wasn't that pretty? It wasn't pretty at all, actually. It was actually quite awful. It was hard to watch. It offended children. Well, it offended me. But regardless. Anyways, Okay, maybe that was over-exaggeration. All right, be quiet, Jeff. Anyways, Express won in overtime, 31-25 in a major upset win. Johnny Manziel actually had a pretty good game, multiple touchdowns for him. Actually, some good passes here and there, had a couple highlights, which begs the question, is this how you call a ruse? A fluke? Or is it signs of things to come? Like, I'm really curious how things are supposed to work out for Johnny Manziel now. Is he meant to really get another shot in the NFL? And I would say I'm not surprised if he does get a contract. And, well, see, it's hard to really go about this because of the fact that we're looking at Johnny Manziel and his history. And it's not the best kind of history, but it's history nonetheless, you know. And so with that being said, I think he will get a shot because of the fact, like it or not, the man's a draw. The man's popular, you know. The man is known. And whether it's someone giving him a shot at starting quarterback job due to injuries or something, because I don't think someone's going to sign him and go, you know what, he's our starter immediately. I think it's going to be more along the lines of he's going to get signed as a backup somewhere, which I think he'll take instantly. But he needs to continue this good effort and good, I guess, resume, if you will, or good tape to show NFL teams and see where they can go from there. And, you know, I can see some teams I can see maybe the Dolphins putting him as a backup and then they bench Fitzpatrick later in the season and then they put in Manziel. There's a possibility there. There's a bunch of possibilities where he could sign to a team. But I can almost guarantee you it's going to be a backup position at first, but then he'll get an opportunity later in the season if he's on a bad team or an injury or some kind like that. So you can always look at opportunities through there. And also, you're looking at Johnny Manziel, and I just think that he will be signed to a backup quarterback kind of contract in the long run. Will it happen soon? Probably not. Will it happen I'll say by next offseason, I say he'll be signed to a team. Not as a starter, of course, like I said, as a backup, maybe even third string, maybe even just practice squad. Who knows where he will be in that time. But he needs to continue productivity. He needs to continue to be the opposite of what he was in Canada. A turnover machine. A Nathan Peterman, if you will. No disrespect, Nathan. And you just got to look at all those factors and go, he just needs to be playing solid. He just needs to continue to play solid. Doesn't need to win all his games. He won his first game, though. That's a good start. But he just needs some productivity. He just needs to continue the consistent productivity, and he should be signed to an NFL team by the end of next season. And the next offseason, that is. But, again, I understand why people will be hesitant to sign him. I know why the AAF signed him. I know why the CFL signed him, because he's still a high-profile name. He's a Heisman Trophy winner and all this stuff. But the NFL don't need him. The NFL doesn't need that namesake because they have their own namesakes and they have their own legacies and all these other things. The AAF is still trying to get momentum viewership-wise and all these other things. So it makes sense to go after Johnny Manziel and people tune into that Memphis Express versus Birmingham Irie game just out of sheer curiosity because, you know, they want to see if Johnny Manziel still can play because that's his first time playing in America since his time in Cleveland, and that was a while ago. So it's obviously if people viewed that game, it was a curiosity type of thing, seeing if he was going to lay an egg like he did in Canada or not. It was very unknown at the time, and he didn't lay an egg. He actually played very decent. He got some touchdowns in there. He had some good throws. So if he continues to just manage the game or help them win games or just not throw interceptions, I would say. I think that's the best way to describe it is Johnny Manziel not throwing interceptions because that first game he had with I believe it was Montreal Alouettes, if I'm not mistaken, and his first couple passes were picked off and all such. I think he needs to avoid that because everyone knows about that. Everyone's seen that clip of him throwing picks after picks after picks in that game in the Canadian Football League. So if he can just rub that away, if he can just scrub that away from what people think of him, he can play well in the AAF and not replicate that kind of performance, because he can't afford one bad performance like that, or I think he's done for good. I don't think he's getting another shot in the NFL, because I think he's on thin ice as it is, of course. But I think it all comes down to the point where you're looking at him and going, if he can stay healthy, of course, because that's also very important. If he can still be accurate with his passes, I think he had some very accurate passes in his game yesterday. And if it comes down to it, I will see him in the NFL again. But I'm not saying it's 100%. I'm not saying it's 50%. I'll give it a 15% chance of happening. I'm not giving it a high percentage. But I'm still giving it a chance to see what will happen because it's only been one game, of course, so he's not going to get signed immediately. So we'll see how everything else does as the season progresses. We are almost at the end of the season, too. So I guess we might have to wait till next year to figure out how he does in the full season of the AAF and go from there. But regardless, I think it's just he needs to finish the season strong, obviously, to get at least a peak, let's see what's going on over here, You gotta interest these scouts, gotta interest the teams. So step one is almost complete. I think he still needs a little more ways to go before that first step of getting attention from the NFL at least is a go. So we'll see how all that goes down. But it's funny to see a guy like Johnny Manziel get another shot in the AAF and just doing something well with it. It makes you think about another quarterback that's looking for a job in Colin Kaepernick. I hate going back to him every now and again, but you got to go back to him when you think about Johnny Manziel because they kind of have the same path. They're both kind of in that controversial state of they have the talent, but are they worth the headache kind of deal? Kaepernick with his standpoint and kneeling during the national anthem is still a very controversial statement. And, of course, Johnny Manziel with not the best history off the field as well with his drinking and alcohol and other things of that nature. And with that being said, which one's worse is that's not the debate here. It's more along the lines of is the AAF the place where they can get a redemption story, if you will? But I think that leaves it up to interpretation of what can they both do in the AAF compared to what they can do in the NFL. That is to be determined because the talent is different. Manziel's playing great, had a great game yesterday, sure, but does that mean he can have a great game in the NFL? Probably not. That probably doesn't mean a thing. But it could help his confidence, could help him just get it back into the groove of things. Who knows what the outcome's going to be for Johnny Manziel in the long run. But again, I think when it comes down to Colin Kaepernick, it's going to be the same thing. They both have to prove themselves. They both have to show some solid season or two in the AAF in order to get back into the NFL, especially Colin Kaepernick, since he's been not playing football professionally since, 2014? About 2014, 2015, roughly. Maybe even 2016. I forget when exactly this all happened. But regardless, it's going to be a very interesting scenario for sure, to say the least. But we are going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about Gronk's retirement and what does this mean for the Patriots as well as Gronk himself. We'll get right on that when we return.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Just finished talking about Johnny Manziel and his AAF debut. Now we're moving on to the resurrection of one's career, possibly, question mark. Ask again later. To the end of a legendary career, as Rob Gronkowski has announced his retirement from professional football. So we think, because he did say a heartfelt message on Instagram about his retirement. Then his agent went to say, don't be surprised if he does try to return for the 2019 season. So, retired or Brett Favre it? Retired or Brett Favre it? Retire or far? I can't mix those two together. Tried to, failed. Okay, so let me say my piece about this. First of all, Gronk has had some legendary performances on and off the field, I guess you could say. As a big partier, the big guy that just heavy, like the big partier. I mean, he went to the University of Arizona, one of the big party schools in the country. Makes sense. And also the fact that he's had some memorable moments and career. He's had 17 touchdowns in a season, more by a tight end in history in a season. He's had one of the most receiving yards for a tight end. He's had he's had a lot of single season records for tight ends and games and postseason records that you can't even count. Okay, you could probably count, but there are quite a few postseason and regular season records that Rob Gronkowski has in his mantle, I guess you can say. So, with that being said, he also has 3 rings, 3 Super Bowls, 49, 51, and 53. So, I guess the question is, if he does come back, why would he come back? What's the reason? The love of the game, of course, is one of them. It doesn't need to be to prove anything because he's already proven so much. And the fact that he hasn't played a full 16-game season since 2011, that is a question mark. But again, it's one of those things you're looking at it and going, you know what? Regardless of, last time he had record-breaking year. So, looking at the reason to come back would only be for the love of football. I honestly don't see any other reason to join back into the NFL. Let me explain. First things first. He has enough money. He's been reported not even touched his Patriot money yet, on his contract, because of the sponsorship money he's being paid on multiple sponsorships and commercials and all that kind of thing. So money is not going to be the reason. Championships, he already has those, so that can't be the reason. Something to prove? I mean, there's really nothing much to prove. Like I said, he has the single season records, he has the postseason records, and He has 79 touchdowns, which I believe is second most in tight ends. Among tight ends, behind, I believe it was Tony Gonzalez, who was like 100-something, 111, if I'm not mistaken. So that can't be it, unless he's trying to break that touchdown record, which I don't think he wants or he needs to nor cares about. Maybe he does. I'm not entirely sure. I don't know. Then you looking at like maybe playing with Tom until he retires, maybe, but he's already played with him for 8 years. He's 29 years old. He's injury prone to the bone. And, oh, wow, that kind of rhymed. Prone to the bone. That was an inadvertent rhyme. So, anyways, moving on. So, with that being said, like, he really doesn't need to do anything else. At 29 years old, he's literally done everything you can to be successful in the National Football League. Like, I can't think of one particular thing that will be a logical reason to come back. And it's just one of those things you're looking at and going, interesting. Why would the agent say something like that? Why would why would the agent say don't be surprised? I just don't think there's anything more to prove. I just don't think there's anything more to do for him. Like, I can't think of anything. There's nothing. He's done everything you want to do in the professional football level. So, what else? I'm just trying to figure it out. But if my guess, he's not coming back. There's no reason to come back. Absolutely no reason. No reason to even flirt with the thing of coming back. You know, it's just one of those things you're looking at and going, it's just not logical. Okay, maybe logical is the right word. It just is not probable. It doesn't make sense. And, okay, maybe it doesn't make sense is the right word. It just doesn't need to happen. It's not necessary. I can't explain it more than that. And with that being said, to Gronk, a fellow Arizona alum, he has made the game entertaining. He's one of the most entertaining guys he was one of the most entertaining guys in the league. Still like a guy you would totally hang out with, have fun time with, off the field. And that's what he was known for. And he's known for just being a beast on the field. And it's great tight end, a guy that can be reliable. I mean, look in the Super Bowl 53. That catch at the 1-yard line to get them into the end zone was probably the highlight of the game. Because, like, nothing really else happened in that game. But regardless, it's one of those things you're looking at and you're going, okay, I get it. He's great. And he proves it when he steps onto that field. People doubt him. He proves them wrong. And I just see it on more along the lines of how do I describe this? It's a legendary career that doesn't need any more padding. It's like Tom Brady. Tom Brady wants to continue playing. He's been healthy a majority of his career. He had that one ACL tear in 2008 after the undefeated season, sure. But when it comes to Gronk, he's had countless injuries. He's had countless issues with injuries. And he doesn't need to really risk hurting himself anymore, It just doesn't seem probable. It doesn't seem like it's just not necessary. I don't know how else to describe it. I keep going back to that. It's not necessary. He's going to be in Canton. I don't think there's any denial about that. If he doesn't get in Canton, I think I'll be shocked. Is basically how that's going to go down. But regardless, I think it's more along the lines that he's going to be in Canton. He's won his 3 Super Bowls. Does he really need to do anything else? Does he really need to prove anything else? He doesn't. That's the point. He doesn't need to do anything. He doesn't need to prove anything. He's done all you can when it comes to professional football. And that's the bottom line. Because Stone Cold said so. Okay. I had too much fun with that. But yeah, you're looking overall at what he's done. He doesn't need anything else. He's good. He's all good. And I think he should keep it that way. He should keep it as a legendary career that ended on his own terms. Not because a certain injury cost him his career or anything else like that. It's because he left on his own terms. That's the best way to describe this. So, with that being said, will the Patriots miss him? I guess that's the age-old question now, ain't it? Will the Patriots miss him? I honestly don't know. This is a tricky question because he is in and out of the lineup with injury more often than not. And it's hard to really see what will be missed. Will he be missed as a threat? Absolutely. Will he be easily forgotten? Will they pick up another tight end of his caliber? Probably not. There's a lot of questions to be had when it comes down to what's the best replacement for a Hall of Fame tight end, obviously. And that's a tough decision. But, they've done so much without him because he's been injured most of his career. And 9 times out of 10, he's not in the lineup. Oh, he just feels that way too. But he has been a huge point. He has been a huge vital point in their offense. So it's going to be a factor he's not going to be there. Because that's a hole that there's an opening. We don't have to wait. We don't have to have a double coverage of the tight end. Because remember, they had Eric Berry, the Chiefs did in the AFC Championship game, try to go single coverage with Rob Gronkowski, and it just did not work out at all. It just was an abject failure, and that's one of the reasons they lost, honestly. So with that, they lose that kind of thing. They lose that kind of advantage, whether it's a double coverage to make someone else open or a single coverage and he's got to get the ball most of the time in a single coverage situation against a DB or even a linebacker for that matter. So, yes, it's got to hurt losing him. But if anybody can adapt to what they have on the field, it's Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. I don't think there's any denial of how good they are to not only at scheming and planning, but how they can best utilize everybody on the field, regardless of when they were drafted or when they were signed or how long they were signed for, or what their overall in Madden is, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? Just they can use anyone to a point where they will go 12-4, 11-5, 13-3. Does it help they're in a weak division? Yes. But regardless, but they prove it in the playoffs that they deserve to be there. They beat those high-profile teams. They beat those great teams. Like they beat the Chiefs in the regular season and then in the playoffs. Like, you can't deny how good they are. It's just one of those things in looking at it and going, that makes sense. They just know how to do a playoff. They know how to win a playoff game. They know how to win games. They know how to utilize everybody. I can't stress enough that kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't stress enough that kind of ability they have, that game plan they both have. That's why Belichick's one of the greatest head coaches, if not the greatest head coach of all time. That's why Tom Brady's one of the greatest quarterbacks, if not the greatest quarterback of all time. It all just goes with planning, scheming, utilizing everyone to their best efforts. And like I said, no one is better than the Patriots. Absolutely no one is better than the Patriots when it comes down to it. When it comes down to scheming and planning and all what I just said. So, with that being said, let's take a short break. And when we come back, we'll look at the available free agents still left in the NFL and where their best destinations is, and possibly, just possibly, what they can do to help out their new teams if they get signed to the teams I predict. We'll be right on that when we return.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back, everyone, to the GSMC Football Podcast. We just left off with the retirement of Rob Gronkowski and talked about Johnny Manziel and his AAF debut. Now we're going on to the NFL free agent market and who is left in the free agent market. So let's see who's left. The most notable name I see on here is Ndamukong Suh is still available. He has not been picked up yet. Free agent, unrestricted. And I think the main question here is, like, how long of the contract will it be? Will it be a short-term contract, like 2-3 years, maybe even less, maybe just a 1-year contract to win now kind of situation for certain teams? Or is it going to be a long-term contract and it's like 4 or 5 years? And they think he still has a lot left in the tank. And he's still a great player, no doubt about it. And Ndamukong Suh is a big name. But with that big name comes big money. And is that big money worth what you're getting back? You know, it's a complicated situation, to say the least, when you're looking overall at what the outcome is going to be. What you get in return, I mean, with the money, that is. And obviously, not because it was a big part of that defense of the LA Rams, and they get to the Super Bowl. Obviously, it was more on the long lines of Aaron Donald, no doubt about it. But I think also you got to look at Ndamukong Suh was also on that line, which made it even more dangerous to look at both of them. And you had to pick one, and usually one of them got through, and 9 times out of 10, it was Aaron Donald. So, who would best be suited to have a veteran defensive lineman with their team? Will it be the San Francisco 49ers with a young DeForest Buckner who had 12 sacks last season and help him on the line with, instead of having Eric Armstead on that side, you have Ndamukong Suh on that side? Possibly. The Washington Redskins, who love to sign old veteran players, I can definitely see that being a possibility. Will it be like the New England Patriots, who just gave Michael Bennett they just acquired Michael Bennett from the Eagles? An opportunity that could also be an absolute opportunity. And it just seems like there's a pattern of where old veteran players who maybe not out of their prime. I won't say Ndamukong Suh's out of his prime, but he's leaving his prime. Does that make sense? Yeah. Maybe he's out of his prime. Maybe some people say that. But regardless, it's one of those things you're looking at it and going, what is the best situation for him? Obviously, he wants to win a Super Bowl, so maybe the Patriots are the way to go if he wants to discuss something like that. And I honestly don't know. But when it comes down to it, it's going to be something very interesting to look at. Whatever team he goes to, you're going to figure out, is it about money or is it about winning? So I don't really know how else to go about this. But when it comes to Ndamukong Suh, I think it's going to be he wants to go to a winning team. I think that's where it's going to be. And he might get a 1 to 2 year contract, $3 to $5 million, maybe. Maybe even less. I wouldn't say less than $3 million. I would say like the worst he would get is like a 1-year, $3.5 million contract. At best, I can see him getting like a 4-year, $30 million contract. I know that seems kind of high, but when it comes to long term, you got to look at it per year. But I don't know. It's an interesting situation to think about. But when it comes down to it, we really don't know what's going to be the outcome for Ndamukong Suh. But I think he's going to be going for more of a he's going to be going for more of a winning team than anything else. That's just my complete guess, though. That's a complete guess in that situation, but who knows what's going to be the outcome of that. Also available on the defensive side is Jamie Collins, the former Patriot and former Brown. Man, what a worse time to leave the Browns, right? First year Bill Peppers has to leave the Browns, and now Jamie Collins gets cut from the Browns. Well, cut is a strong word, but I think it was cut, actually, if I'm not mistaken. But, I mean, you had to go through that team through its roughest of rough times for any franchise, and then you leave, and then they're looking like a Super Bowl contender. Especially Hugh Jackson. Could you imagine a team you took to an 0-16, 1-15, and then you took them to 3-5? Something ridiculous like that. And then you just get fired, and they look like an unstoppable juggernaut now. Two great wide receivers who play together in LSU. You have Baker Mayfield, who really showed himself his rookie season. Nick Chubb, who's a great running back, a top 10 running back in the league. Then you have Kareem Hunt coming back after 8 games, who's also who could possibly still be a top 10 running back, depending on how he returns. And your defense is a turnover machine with Denzel Ward and Myles Garrett running the front. It just seems like it's a good place to be. But for Jamie Collins, he's getting up there in age. So I'm guessing Redskins. Any guy at the age where it's like, oh, he might be out of his prime, I can almost guarantee you the Redskins are going to try to sign him. That's just who the Redskins are. Dan Snyder, I mean, he loves signing old school players. He loves signing old veteran players who've had amazing, maybe not amazing careers, but solid careers, and he thinks they could just lose 10 years before your eyes. Adrian Peterson's one thing. He had a pretty great season last year, all things considered. And obviously, you want to get him back and hope he continues that momentum. And then, you sign Landon Collins to an unreal amount of money. So you look at these names, and it's more about the namesake than quality. It's almost like the quantity over quality or quality over quantity type of thing. It's namesake over production. And that's what the Redskins usually do. That's why they got Case Keenum. It's not production. It's the fact he was the Minnesota Miracle quarterback for the 13-3 Vikings when they almost went to the Super Bowl. But then you forget the fact he played with a bad season with the Denver Broncos and didn't make the playoffs after that. So it was mainly the team around him was so good it made him look amazing compared to him making everyone else look good, like Tom Brady does. So that you also have to look at that factor. Let's look at notable quarterbacks. I don't think there's any notable quarterbacks, to be completely honest, that are available, but I will take a look. I will definitely take a look at that. So we have a Josh McCown, we have a Blaine Gabbert, Matt Castle, Geno Smith, Mark Sanchez, a Josh Johnson, a Brock Osweiler, Brandon Whedon, David Fales, a Tom. Okay. Obviously, it's a who's who of quarterbacks, but obviously none of them are going to be starters, so it's not really worth my time to really look at them. Let's just look offensively overall. When you looked at defense, let's look at offense. Demaryius Thomas is a free agent. He just tore his Achilles, if you remember, recently. And is he going to come back to a team after his run with Houston? I mean, he had a very short time with Houston due to his injury, and he couldn't help them where it mattered most, and that was the playoffs. That's why they got him in the first place. So, that being said, Washington Redskins again? I don't know. Maybe Miami. maybe not even signed. Maybe he'll call it a career because he is coming off an Achilles tear. So, or a ruptured Achilles. So, same thing roughly. But regardless, it's definitely going to be an odd year for Demaryius Thomas and see if he can come back from a rough injury and a chance to win another Super Bowl with the Texans. So, we'll see how that goes. There's also Pierre Garçon, the San Francisco 49ers wide receiver in the free agent market. He's a solid player, but didn't do that well with the 49ers. He's getting up there in age. I really don't know where his future lies. Maybe retirement as well. Jordy Nelson, another wide receiver who from Oakland who got cut, where he's going to go as unknown. Michael Crabtree the same way. Jared Cook, the tight end for Oakland, who was a very solid tight end, actually, a very important tight end, third-round pick in 2009. And he still hasn't signed with a new team yet. We'll see how else he goes. But he's definitely going to be a commodity. I feel like he can be a good asset to most teams. There's also the Marshawn Lynch question. Is that his career done? Still kind of unknown where he's going to lie. So we'll see how everything else transpires. LeGarrette Blount's still a free agent. Spencer Ware, I believe, is still a free agent, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think he signed anywhere yet. Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of stars available, I guess you can say. Maybe Anza, the end from Detroit. He's probably the best player still available. But, like, his market value is probably, like, around, like, what? He's probably expecting, like, 4 year, $54 million. Like, that sounds like a contract that would be worth his pay, you know? But, I mean, let's also look at all players that were free agents this year. I mean, the highest paid so far this season has been Trey Flowers, New England's defensive end, goes to Detroit with their old defensive coordinator for 5 years, $90 million. Nick Foles gets his 4-year, $88 million contract from Jacksonville. C.J. Mosley gets his 5-year, $85 million contract from the Jets. Like I said, Landon Collins gets the longest contract of the offseason so far with a 6-year, $84 million. Anthony Barr took less money to go back to Minnesota for 5 years, $67 million. And yeah, that's just how everything's been going. Then, of course, we have Trent Brown, the left tackle that was in New England. Gets the highest paid left tackle contract, the offensive line contract in history with 4 years, $66 million. And then Earl Thomas going from Seattle to Baltimore on a 4-year, $55 million contract, and so on and so forth. Then Le'Veon Bell gets kind of lowballed in his mind, probably, with a 4-year, $52.5 million contract. And it just kind of shows how everything's been going. The offseason is starting to slow. The free agent market is obviously slowing down because less and less quality players are still available. But we'll see how everything goes as the offseason progresses and as we're getting closer and closer to the draft. And, of course, the Cardinals saying nothing is off the table for their first overall pick. It seems like it's going to go to Kyler Murray. That's what everyone's been kind of pushing for. Or maybe not pushing for, but expecting. And seems like Josh Rosen's almost out the door at this point. So if that happens, then Nick Bosa sweepstakes will be the Kyler Murray sweepstakes at the last second kind of thing. So we'll see how everything turns around. But that should be our show today. Thank you so much for joining us. And hopefully more updates on the offseason will transpire. More news of the NFL draft as we come up to that next month. But as always, I'm Jeff Melanoff, and I'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.